Hello, everybody. It's Brian here in Toronto. I was recently listening to one of my favorite records of all time, certainly one of my favorite records from the 80s. And as I was listening to it, I was reflecting on the fact that in my 12 or 13 or so years watching VC videos, I have never seen this record mentioned by anyone. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any videos about this record. There may well be. I haven't sought them out, I guess. I haven't searched for them, but I just said this record has never come up in any video that I've ever seen, which I find kind of surprising because I think it's a really, really good record. So I would characterize this record that I'm going to talk about as a forgotten record or an overlooked record or maybe just an unheralded record, something that didn't get as much attention as I think it should have. I don't know whether there will be other records that I decide to talk about, but this is one that I really wanted to mention since I had just been listening to it. So the record is from a band. I'm going to put band in quotation marks. So with this band called Think Man, and the album is called The Formula. It came out in 1986. You'll see why I put the band in quotation marks a little later. So I'm going to flip it over and zoom in a bit so you can see. You should be able to see the two band members at the top there, track listing. And then we go to the bottom, you should see two more names of band members. And my presumption is that unless you know this band, the only person that you'll recognize there is this fellow called Rupert Hine. Now, Rupert Hine he died in 2020, a UK record producer and musician. So perhaps he's best known as a record producer. He produced some fairly large acts such as Tina Turner, Stevie Nicks, people like Bob Geldof, Krista Berg, Suzanne Vega, also the Thompson Twins, The Fix, Kevin Ayers, and has some Canadian bands like 8 Seconds, Saga, and even a Rush record. So well established as a producer. If I remember, I will try to insert maybe a scroll of things that he's produced, if I can find it. So definitely a record producer, but he also has produced music or released music of his own. So he was in a band called Quantum Jump. I just grabbed two of the Quantum Jump records, 76 and 1977. He released a number of solo records, I think 6. I just grabbed 3 of my favorites. These are all from the early 80s. We have Immunity. Love that album cover. This has a Hang On To My Vertigo on it, which is a track that got some exposure in some markets, so maybe you know that track. We have Waving Not Drowning with another fabulous cover. This has 11 Faces, The Setup, and Curious Kind. Those are probably the 3 tracks that are most notable, again from the very early 80s. And then we have The Wildest Wish to Fly. This is kind of a weird release because the UK version had a slightly different track listing. For the North American release, they put on a Hang On To My Vertical, even though it had just been released 2 records ago, but they put it back here again. So I should find a UK pressing of that if I can. My friend Pete, during my undergrad, would often come to my room in residence and lend me tapes and records to listen to. You know, everything from Andreas Vollenweider to Pat Metheny and Adrian Belew and Stan Ridgway. The list goes on. It's a huge list. And one day he came in with these records. These are obviously my copies, but I remember him certainly lending me this one for sure. And one day, so I have to thank him for that because he exposed me to lots of music, and he knew that I would listen to it. And he knew that I would have an opinion, and generally I liked what he lent me. And one day he came in with this record from Think Man. I didn't know anything about it. Couldn't tell you. I think I recognized Rupert Hine's name because I had already heard that record, but I didn't know anything about it. And I listened to it and I loved it. I made a copy of it, listened to it religiously for a long time. It was my go-to tape for whatever I was doing, was this record. And it wasn't until some years ago that I actually discovered more about this record. So let's just dig into it a bit. And I'm going to say that first I should explain why it's why I put band in quotation marks, because this is really a fake band. On the back here, we have these 4 members. Only Rupert Hine participated in the making of this record. He wrote the music, played almost all of the instruments. Lyrics were written by someone named Jeanette. I wrote her name down so I wouldn't forget. Jeanette Obstage. The other 3 people are actors. So I'm going to read you their names, just so you have it for posterity. The first person is Greg Kurtwell, who played drums under the name of Joe MacArthur. Then we have Andy Baker, who played bass under the name of Andy Paris. Julian Clary. Now, that might be a name that some people know because he's a UK, maybe comedian, actor, I guess. And he played keyboards under the name of Leo Hurl. So they are actors. There are videos for 2 songs on YouTube. If you look up Brilliant Adventures, Best Adventures, the first track, you will see them playing their instruments fakely playing their instruments. Like, they obviously don't know what they're doing. So, and Rupert Hine is there as well. So why is there a fake band? Seems like a strange thing to do. Well, evidently, Rupert Hine was kind of upset about his solo career or wanted to reinvigorate it. So he came up with this idea that he proposed to the record company of a group called Think Man, who were people that had secrets. So they started spreading these rumors about this group that had secrets, inside information about the real truth in the world of mass media manipulation. So that was the idea. And he hired actors to form band members so it wouldn't actually be a Rupert Hine solo project. So that's the basis of it. So the formula is a concept album about mass media. And on first listen, I mean, there's no reason anyone would know that if they hadn't seen the press release or the interviews, but that's the thing they tried to get away with. I guess it worked for a while. I certainly wasn't aware of it. And they did 3 records. But I think by the time the second and third record came out, I think it was known that it was not a real band. So it's kind of a strange thing to do when you think about it. But so the sound of this record is, well, first of all, they have kind of a new romantic look to them. So that's kind of gives you a sense of the time period. It has a 80s new wave synth pop program drumming sound that you'd expect from that time period, which is something I really like. Now, there are other musicians on this record. Here, I'll just show you the inside here first. There's the band in quotes again. So, as I said, Rupert Hine did all of the music, but Chris Thompson, who was guitarist in Manfred Mann, shows up here. Now, it doesn't say track for track where he is, but he does appear here. James West Oram from The Fix is here. He does a really interesting guitar work in the track The Ecstasy of Free Thought. We have Stuart Copeland from The Police. Whenever there's drumming that isn't programmed, that's Stuart Copeland. And then finally, there's vocals by someone called Del Bello. Originally, she was known as Lisa Del Bello in Canada. And she was known to us as children because she sang jingles on television. So for the Sears department store, she would sing the jingles. And then she became more involved in her own music career and eventually changed her name to Del Bello and had, I think, quite a successful career. Her voice on here is spectacular. So those are the extra musicians on here. By the way, the lyricist Jeanette Obstage wrote lyrics for Rupert Hine's previous records. She also wrote the lyrics to the Fix song Separation Sunday, if you know that track. So, so a concept album revolving around media manipulation. And so I guess early on when I was listening to this record, I did get that sense, having known nothing about it. But the lyrics are not always in your face. One track certainly is. So it starts off with this track. I'm not going to read every lyric here, but the track Best Adventures, and there's a video for this on YouTube. In the first lines, he sings, "Is it time to throw away our memories, photographs and relics of what used to be? Is it time to start again, another life, another name, or does it have to end?" And I guess you're supposed to take away from that, you know, all of the memories and photos you've seen may not actually be true. I'm just guessing here. I'm not maybe the best person to interpret lyrics, but it's kind of a gentle introduction to the record. It's got a really good, the song has a very good musical component to it. So that's just an opening question, I suppose. The second track, which goes on for over 7 minutes, is called The Formula, the title track. And I think it's the best track on the record. It's, as I say, 7 minutes and 17 seconds. And this one's a really sort of in-your-face sort of a discussion about mass media. So he sings, "It's an interview, but it's a second take. There's a questioner, but your mind's at stake. It's a room designed for propaganda's sake. So I think you're supposed to take away from this that the interviews you see in news may not actually be accurate, that maybe we're being fed propaganda. There's also this component of, turning off the television. So he's singing, let's break down the formula, let's switch off the set. I could crash my car through your screen. I could take a match to your empire. And then Lisa Dalbello sings these really interesting lines. You open the door, let me into your home. You show me how to cry. You tell me how to scream and how to watch when you're alone. And then she says, you can choose any channel from your chair, but I've got a better idea. Tear up the guide, the TV guide, rip down the aerial. So that's the most, I think, direct song about kind of shutting the media out of your life. Legend, the third song, I would say, is the song that sounds closest to a Howard Jones song. It should have been a single. It wasn't, but it should have been a single. It sort of would fit in the radio at the time. But again, there are leaders and those who only wish to follow and be fed. And I think what he's meaning by that is fed the news that we see in the media. Now, I'm not saying that he is correct in any of these statements at all. I mean, that's for you to decide, but it's something to think about. Like, we are fed information. There are strangers with stolen power, and there are reasons that come tomorrow, but et cetera, et cetera. So, in the chorus he sings, do you want to be a legend or a passing footprint on the sands of time? Do you want to be a failure or the best example of a man who lived to use his mind? So thinking for yourself, there are rebels who can't be silenced. They remind us how to see. There are prophets believing visions while many others put trust in science. And there are dreamers who must get through to your soul. So something to think about. The next track, the title sort of gives it all away, The Ecstasy of Free Thought. So it's just, he poses questions about whether we hear the same music, whether we know the same people. Do we ever change our minds? One flick of the switch could kill you. Will we ever feel the ecstasy of free thought? You're trapped by information. Just let it go. The key hangs with your senses. Set the prisoner free. So these constant things about our education. Do we understand morality from watching television? Do you ever feel the ecstasy of free thought? Something to think about. The conflict is really about digging deeper to find information. You got to go for the root, he sings. You can't deal with it on the surface. You got to put your boot to the door, knock down the walls. You got to brush off the dust and explore, look for the roots of things, look for the cause. He sings it's a conflict between fact and meaning, right? So, there's armed guards on the roof, so you can't actually climb the walls. This kind of thing about like trying to get past what you see to see if there's something else that you're missing. When you watch the starving thousands on the channel of your choice, you're an audience for war. But you're always switching sides. It's like looking at the landscape through a microscope in the middle of the night. Even half a revolution would only bring you light. Go for the root. So it talks about politics, talks about poverty, and information you get from a 24-inch screen. So all that kind of information about how we get information and how many people don't seem to be able to try and find the truth. The challenge, again, I think by this point, if you're really listening to the lyrics clearly, you might be getting a bit overwhelmed. But he's talking about whether do you have wax in your ears? Have you been blindfolded for years? Are you anesthetized? Are you preoccupied? Did someone cruel tell you lies? Did you believe it? Interesting. Can you be hypnotized? Have you been analyzed? The days of a champion. We have lines about the cameras burn hot, and he doesn't say it, but it's like they even duel to get the shot. So presumably different news teams trying to get the best shot. They'll search for him, but he's a burnout star. So looking for, I guess maybe that's a reference to paparazzi. I'm not sure. Yeah. Days of a champion. They will dissect his whole career and watch him disappear. Unrecognized, you'll walk the streets. That kind of thing. The last track, There Shines Our Promised Land, seems on the surface to be a song about leaving this earth for a different one, but it could be a metaphor for changing our way of doing things and maybe seeing a better way forward for how we do things. So we're talking about a sanctuary beyond this place, a universe beyond this place where dreams come true. There's light, there's water, green pastures, no hunger, And I think that's sort of, the sort of idealistic end to the record where we will go to live our better lives and that kind of thing. So if you like 80s music from the mid 80s, if you're interested in that kind of sound, you may like this. Whether the lyrics appeal to you is another story, but I actually really like the way this record is produced. I think it sounds great. And although in the early days when I tried to find this on compact disc, it was only import. I could never find one. Or when I saw them, they were ridiculously expensive. I did find this record, of course, after some point. This record I do see from time to time, and I've seen it for as little as $5. And I think that's a steal, because I think this is actually a really, really good record. So that is my recommendation to start the week off. Look for The Formula by Think Man. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.